Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming and interrupt your Saturday with a silly conversation between very two good and old friends, especially me and the old part. So, for introductions, this is Josefin, Dr. Josefin Sundin, a researcher, a Swedish researcher living in Stockholm and working at SLU. And we met maybe what 12 years ago while we were doing our PhD in. Can I hear you, Josephine?
Yeah, I think you can.
No, ahora, no. Yeah, we met a long time ago while I was trying to do my PhD and Josephine hers, and we were joining in that ordeal, suffering. And but since then, my career went downhill. But Josephine is rising like a star, and that's why I thought it would be great to bring her here. And where are we? And I'm going to introduce this to you, Josephine. This is elbiogrupo, biología.net is my website and the attached community of young students or early career researchers, young professionals of biology. And then we do this. We have chats or interview interesting people that can help us a bit to navigate the scary waters of academia, conservation, biology, how to get alive in this thing that everybody said that wouldn't be able to feed us when we decided to study biology. And here we are. So thank you for joining. How are you, Joseph?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. I'm not sure why you said we were trying to do our PhDs. I mean, we were acing it, obviously.
It was amazing. I think it is one of my best memories, the best stages of my life. I think the PhD, but particularly those first 3 months in Sweden. Wow, we had so much fun. It's
And then the
crazy.
coming 12 years.
And then they come in 12 years. Yeah, we did a lot. We did a lot. Well, I want this to be a conversation and just catch up also because it was a few weeks since last time we talked, so we can take advantage of the situation. But I also want to know things that I don't think I have ever asked you before. Like, for example, we could start why why did you study biology? Why did you choose to enter this this profession?
I guess it's, for me, probably similar to many other people. I'm just in general very interested in animals and nature. Not so much in plants, but mainly creepy crawly stuff. And I was very interested in animals as a child, and kind of, I grew up on the countryside, and me and my siblings, we were out playing in the forest or by the lake, and we'd just catch frogs and whatever fish, or go out with our nets and collect anything, or snakes and vipers, and show it to our terrified parents.
The classic.
And
but
so,
you were the only one from your brothers
yeah, all of them are.
and
I think
sisters.
all of us siblings are very interested in biology, but yeah, I'm the only one who chose to become a biologist. So of course, it's not only about upbringing, or I don't know. I just felt I worked with some other stuff in between finishing high school and before I started the university. Just ran, like, I worked at a factory and in as a waitress, and just because I was tired of school, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I even at that point, I knew that I wanted to study biology. I just needed kind of a break from school. And so after a few years of break, I just started to study biology because, I don't know, that's just what I wanted to do.
Very nice. And then where did you study? Where was that?
I studied at a very small university. I guess it's called also University College in Sweden. We have, or maybe it's the same in Spain and other countries, that we have kind of the proper universities, and then we have the University College version. And it was on Gotland, which is the largest Swedish island in the Baltic Sea. And it's a very pretty place. It's like a limestone plateau with, it's very different from the rest of Sweden. And smack in the Baltic Sea, so that affects the island, of course, how it looks. And we were also a small group of students, and I don't know, it was kind of nice to study at a very small place, I think.
Very, very nice. Yeah, I love the island. We should plan a trip soon.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming.
I might go there in a few weeks' time to tag some eels. So you're welcome to join.
Field work. Yeah, I should totally soon. I'm joining all your field work, all the one I got. But in a couple of weeks, I think I'm going also to do field work here with some little birds. Okay, so you started biology with your small group of friends and co-students. and then you are finishing biology and you are thinking about what to do next. And how did you choose and what did you choose to do when you finish?
Well, it's funny when you talk about these things to people because it's always quite random. And I think that's how it happened for me. And I think that's how it happens for many people. It's difficult to plan. And even if you plan, that's not how it's going to end up. And so I studied 3 years on Gotland. So I took my bachelor's there. And they had a 4th year, but it was kind of with courses I didn't find that interesting. And at that time, I guess Sweden and other countries in Europe were going through this Bologna process of kind of streamlining so that the education system should be more similar across countries. So we had 3 + 1 year was the master's level before in Sweden, and then we kind of converted to the 3 + 2 year system. And so all universities were kind of rushing to create 2-year master's programs at that exact time. And I kind of, by random chance almost, picked one of those newly created master's program in Gothenburg. And so then I moved there and studied. And then they also told us kind of when we had taken some classes, they told us that we had the option to do a thesis after, like within the 1st year, or we could take more courses and then make like one big thesis. And I think this option is still the same. And so anyhow, so I thought like, well, I wanted to do the thesis work is kind of the fun stuff. So I didn't want to wait if we didn't need to wait. So I just took a few courses and then I did my master thesis work within the 1st year, which by random chance ended up being on pipefish, which is kind of the boring relative to the seahorses. Kind of like you take a seahorse and you straighten it out, and then you have a pipefish. And so I worked with those. And while I was there working, there was a PhD position, or an ad for a PhD position came out to work with pipefish, which was kind of convenient because I was just there working with pipefish. And so that's how I ended up doing my PhD on pipefish. And also I ended up doing just a 1-year master's because, well, why do 2 years then when I just had a a
I
PhD
can go
on
just
my own.
to the PSC. So you didn't have any doubts. You thought, I like this. This is fun doing experiments and working in the field, and then I can start a PhD.
I definitely had doubts. I think I was. I don't think I was doubting like whether it would be interesting, or I think I was more doubting myself. Like how am I going to be a scientist? Like scientists are something way above and beyond, and so it felt scary to that I would all of a sudden be a scientist. But I just applied because the position was out there, and I also talked to some. I mean, there were some really good people around that I could talk to, and I was also collaborating with people that were 1 and 2 years into their PhD, and they were also encouraging me, like, of course you should apply, and it kind of happened so fast. So I don't think there wasn't so much time to think about it. The ad came out, people encouraged me, I applied, and then I was offered the position, and then it was more like, whoa.
And you had no other alternatives that would lure you. Like
Yeah,
this
no,
was the shiny part.
yeah, there wasn't
Yeah.
time for any alternatives in a way.
Yeah. And it seemed like, well, this looks fun. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, I was thinking before, like in Spain, for example, going to university is very cheap. We pay very little. But
Mhm.
I remember from in Sweden, I think you have to take a loan, maybe, but it's paid. But how does that work? Before we.
Okay, yeah. So the education system in Sweden is completely free. The
Mhm.
university is free for everyone. There's no fee at all for the university. But in order to sustain your living costs, you pay your rent and you have to eat, you can take a loan. So it's like a governmental institution or body that gives you this loan, and it's very. I mean, it's money that you loan, and you have to pay it back later in life. Like I'm paying back my loan now, and I'm gonna do it for many years. But it's still. It's a very what's the word? I mean, it's the
Flexible or.
yeah, or
Mm.
it's much better than any other loan that you can take because it's specifically for your education. It's not going to
Mhm.
the bank and taking a loan.
And
Uh,
some people from other countries can access this system.
yes, you can. I think. I mean, you have to kind of register somehow within Sweden, but definitely students from abroad, they can also benefit from this system. And you don't have to take this loan. It's just
Mhm.
that
It's just for the living cost.
yeah, it's for the
It's,
living cost. So if you live, if you work at the same time as you study, or try to keep your costs very low, like you can, some people continue living with their parents, for example,
Mhm.
and so then you can do your entire university education without any loan and for
and
free.
the master's part, it's also included in this.
Yes.
Nothing changes.
Yeah.
So, for example, someone from Spain who will want to study a master's in Sweden could do a master's for free there
Yes.
and even have access to this very flexible loan and study there. Good to
It's
know.
mostly, I mean, it's for countries outside of the EU, there is some sort of smaller fee for to go to the university, and that's rather new. Before it was free for everyone, but I think also, I mean, that's very beneficial for students, and quite a few students would come to Sweden, they would get the education, and then they would just go back to their own country and not contribute anything to Sweden. And that when we couldn't sustain that. But within the EU, I guess we have decided that we should help, and movement in general is good. And it should be supported. So there are no fees for EU member states.
Fantastic. Yeah, something to know. Also, I found out about another master's here in the Czech Republic where I'm now, and the fee was for a very what looked like a very nice master with lots of practical stuff and field trips, and the fees were something like 30 euros. So it's, if people are out there thinking, should I spend 5,000 euros in a master's? There are other options.
Yes.
It's good to look for these free options.
Yeah, definitely.
That
And
can also lead you to very nice places. So then you decide to start with your beloved pie fish, and this was in Uppsala already.
Yes. So I was doing my master's in Gothenburg, but the PhD position was in Uppsala. So then I moved there, and I definitely do remember that it wasn't at all like, I was very scared and thought that everything was like, what am I doing here? And in particular, since I had done the main part of my education at this kind of really small university, and I was thinking like, oof, I bet Uppsala is a very fancy kind of university. It's really old and well known, and I was like, oh, I'm sure everyone else has a much better education than I do, and I'm not going to understand anything. But I don't think that's how it was, and I mean, I did manage, so. But yeah, it was just I don't know. I remember like walking through the corridor and thinking really hard about everything. Like, okay, now this can happen. Or if we were sitting at lunch talking, I'd be like, my God, everyone's so clever. And
How? Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
after a
I mean,
while,
I
I
think
realized like everyone's not so clever. We're just talking random stuff or talking within your comfort zone.
everybody feels this imposter syndrome from the very beginning and drags it along the whole career. Yeah, it starts very early. What how do the first years of the PhD look like in Sweden? So, for example, in Spain, before we had some courses, but then it changed to the masters is those courses, and then what we do is just directly start with experiments or working. And then we had some midpoint, not exam, but not test even. It's like they check our work and they tell us, okay, you can continue with the PhD. And then there is a final defense once everything is ready. So the defense is more like a confirmation, and it's hard and it makes you nervous, but this is kind of done once you reach that stage. So how is it in Sweden? It's a bit different, right?
Yeah, it's similar in many ways, but we do have courses still as part of the PhD program. So I think it's close to, but maybe we have more years because the PhD in Sweden is 4 years. You have 3 in Spain. Is that so?
Now it's changing. Yeah, most of it is 3. Mine was 4. I did it in 5 just to make, the better science. But yeah, I think they are cutting and cutting more the
Yeah.
years.
So in Sweden it's 4 years, but one of those years is actually more or less courses. But you can like spread it out the way it fits your experiments. I mean, it depends on what kind of data collection is part of your PhD, I guess.
And you
And
can stretch it a bit also by teaching, is that right?
yes. So it's also common that you have teaching or other like institutional work, and you can have a maximum of 20%. And if you have the maximum amount, that means 1 year extra in those. So if you have teaching or institutional work, the entire PhD period is 5 years.
Yeah.
Which I think, I mean, that's good because there's a huge difference, at least between 3 and 5 years. So you definitely have more time to learn, and yeah, I think
Getting more data.
couple of years. Yeah. But the teaching, it's not like an extra year is given to you. Usually teaching takes more time than it gives, but it's rewarding in many other ways.
Yeah, and it adds to your CV, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Because most positions, if you decide to continue in academia, then most positions, they imply that you are going to teach. So yeah, so that's definitely really good. And we, like, some of the courses were in pedagogics, for example, which is also required later on, that you have these pedagogical courses. But other than that, I think, yeah, it's flexible, and it depends on how your data collection looks. Or like, if you are like, I did all my data collection in the field, and it had to be done during the summer, because that's when the fish are active. So then, like, I have to do my data collection this period, and the other time of the year, you do the other stuff.
The other stuff. Lots of stuff. And I wanted to ask you, like, what you this PhD offer, where did the funding come from, and are there many sources of funding to do a PhD in Sweden? If someone from anywhere, Sweden or another country, will want to do a PhD in Sweden, do you know of sources that they could look?
Yeah, so my funding came from the department, actually. So sometimes the various universities, they have a bit of extra funding. Like, usually they don't have extra funding, but sometimes that happens, that all of a sudden they have extra funding. And then the university or the department can decide that the most beneficial use of this funding is to give it to one of the professors so that they can hire a PhD student. And that's how it was in my case. So my funding was department funding. But the most common way is that as a researcher, you apply for and you are granted a research grant, which then contains enough money to hire a PhD student. And then you advertise that position for anyone to apply.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also, as a student, you can also apply for your own money. Like, you can contact, if you're interested to work in a specific group or with a researcher, you can contact that person, and you can together apply for example, Carl Trygger, and there's a couple of Wennergrens, there's the Lamska Foundation. There's a couple of foundations that give PhD funding, and that's also very good on your CV if you already at your PhD level kind of funded your own PhD in a way. That's yeah,
it's an advantage. And also, I mean, if you do the legwork first and do all the research, where to get the funding, prepare an application and ideas, and then contact potential potential scientists in Sweden, then it's much easier than they say, okay, yeah, let's go for it, than if you ask them to do that legwork.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think most researchers would be more than happy to help out.
Host.
And even if you feel like, oh, I'm not sure my idea, maybe you have an idea and you want to work with someone, but then you're like a bit unsure about how cool is this idea really. I'm sure the person you contact, like, if the idea isn't good enough for some reason, or already done, or not enough or whatever, I'm sure they would have a ton of ideas
And alternatives.
Yeah.
But it's a very good first step and a good sign that you know where to find. And that always impressed me a lot from you, Josefin, because you always knew where to apply for things, for trips, and get more funding to go places. And that's, I mean, how many places did you go during your PhD? You were everywhere.
I don't know how many. Well, I went to kind of the same place many times also, but yeah, the benefit of studying at a university that's been around for a while. I don't think this is unique to Sweden, but if you like, Uppsala University has been around for a very long time, and there are lots of stipends that are specific to Uppsala University or other old universities, because there was just some students studying there back in the days. Back in the days, the students were usually rich people because no one else could afford to study. That's also similar across Europe and anywhere, I guess. And then later in life, they just decided to donate or set up a foundation to support future students. And those are still around. Some of them are 100 years old and they are still giving out funding. So there's so many opportunities to apply for extra funding. And one reason that I knew about this is also, I mean, that was great for me, but it's also because my salary was paid from this department money. And that meant that my supervisor didn't have a grant. And so there was no extra money for anything. So when I wanted to do something, like I want to take a course in another country, you can also do that. Or I mean, you also went to Sweden as part of your PhD, so you can, if you want to. I also went to other labs, and or you want to do a field trip, or you want to go on a conference. My supervisor said that you are welcome to go, but he didn't have any money. And so I had to apply, but there were also so many options, and usually it was quite easy to get the money. Maybe not so much, but you could also apply for many places, and together it was enough.
Yeah, so once you have the application, you can choose different ones.
So yeah, I mean, those extra stipend money is what paid all of our trips to Australia and Trinidad and I don't know where, India, the places where we've been to collect data.
Definitely a good thing to do. To not stop there and use your PhD to go on adventures. And there was something when I defended my PhD, I had a committee and they were asking questions about my research and hitting me hard. Now they were very nice, but I was destroyed and super nervous, and you were there, and it was very scary for me. And then a few months later, or the following year, I think, I don't remember, but it was your turn to defend. And your defense, I mean, in Sweden, you not only have this committee, but you have a specific person called the opponent that will torture your work and take the most of it, and also the good and the bad parts, and really examine it. And even though it was, I think, much scarier, much more scary, much it would have put me much more nervous than my own defense. For you, it was such a walk in the park. You were just talking anecdotes to the family, and you actually gave your presentations. Your presentation was for family and friends, and I remember being there in the audience and thinking, why didn't I do it like this? I would have enjoyed it so much. So I wanted to ask you about this process, the Swedish defense, and also how did you take it so nicely and you were not nervous at all? What's your trick? And you have any advice for people going soon through this?
I guess first of all, you need to have a good opponent. And my opponent was Bob Wong. He's a researcher. He works at Monash University in Australia. And I had met him a couple of times at conferences and stuff before. And so I knew him a little bit, and he was working in the same area. Obviously, that's why he was the opponent. And he was, he is a really great guy. And I think he also I mean, sometimes I think the defense is not going so well because the opponent has not been given the correct information on how a defense work in the specific country you are invited to. But in my case, they had really, and there had been, because there had been like a couple of defenses where it was obvious that this opponent has not been given the correct instructions, and they were like going through like typos in the already printed, like the thesis is already printed, and basically you have passed more or less. For us, the oral defense is also more like you basically can't fail it because you have already passed and the thesis is printed. So going through like errors in the
Yes.
thesis is completely pointless. But my opponent, he had been given clear instructions that it's supposed to be more like a discussion and kind of putting the work into the greater context and so on. And he really did. And he was also asking me things not because he was wondering about the answer, but kind of because he just wanted me to present the answer to the audience. And in many questions he asked, knowing that it would make me look good, because it was for, I had some papers published that wasn't part of my thesis because they were about like related topics, but not the specific topic of my PhD. And he was asking stuff related to that, and he's like, do you know anything about this? Knowing, of course, that I had published another paper on that. And so making, and then my answer was like, well, I happen to, because I published a paper.
I'm glad you asked.
It was a bit of a show, but yeah, it was, I'd say it's very much up to the opponent how the defense is going to be.
And any other tips or suggestion for people that are feeling nervous right now? Like how this focus of that you did, for me was a tip, like to put the focus on the audience and not trying to defend already for the committee. You were explaining what you did. It was so nice.
I think it's important to remember that no one, what you have done and written in your thesis, no one knows it better than you. You've just spent years on this stuff, and you're gonna be able to defend it. And I think you just have to remember that you know what's in there, and that means you can defend it or answer any questions related to it. So I think, yeah, but I don't know. It's also part of it to kind of be a bit nervous, I guess.
Yeah, if not, it wouldn't be important.
Yeah. And it's if you have the opportunity to have your family and friends coming to listen, if the defense is open, like in the UK, for example, I think the defense is completely closed. But
in Australia, no?
Yeah, maybe. And so then you don't have, then I'd be much more nervous because having
Exactly.
having your family and friends there, and yeah, I guess I did the PhD student is not supposed to have a long presentation about the work. You're just gonna like with 15 minutes or so shortly present what you did, and then the opponent puts it into a greater context, and then you have a long discussion about the thesis work, and then there's also the committee that can ask questions. And so I had kind of, I don't know why, but I just thought it's fun to present what I have done, but also use a little bit of those 15 minutes to just say, because there's so many other things also, and I kind of wanted to share with my family and friends some of the stuff we had been doing on the side that are also very important. And was more fun for them to see. And I think also because since none of them I mean, they don't know the academic system at all. So I think for them, they barely understand what I'm doing. Why are you in school for such a long time studying those
Exactly.
fish? Like, how many years can you spend on it?
And when are you going to start working? The classic.
Yeah. So I guess that also helped, yeah, to be less nervous.
Yeah, my only chance to explain what I'm doing to my family and friends. Probably one of the first ones to having all together.
And
Yeah.
my mother, she doesn't even speak English, and all of it was in English, of course. So she was just sitting there, still being super impressed that I was like standing in front of the audience talking about something that, whatever.
What an epic moment. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, so for everyone out there facing the same, just enjoy this. Or you will regret it like I do. I regret not having enjoyed more because maybe you can always enjoy it. I enjoy it a bit more.
Mm.
But you did it with flying colors, and then you were a brand new doctor,
Yes.
and then what happened? What do you do with this? Like, what do you have any plans already set up?
Um, I wanted to try to continue. I knew that, and actually, I think one other reason, but I'm not gonna suggest. I don't think that's a good way to do it. But one of the reasons that I was relaxed at my PhD defense was also that because I was completely exhausted because I had just written a grant proposal that had to be, the deadline was 3 days before my PhD defense. So when I was kind of in the middle of preparing my PhD defense, this option to apply for this funding, it was Swedish governmental funding, and so or else you'd have to wait 1 year, and and so and you also helped. I remember you were sitting at my table, reading through my application and helping out. And I was just, yeah, when that was submitted, I was just so exhausted. I was like, okay, what's next? Defense.
Depends.
And so anyway, and so of course, yeah, since I had applied for that, I was kind of, I mean, I was hoping to get that and to continue in science. But the competition is very, very, yeah, there's a lot of competition for grants. And I guess after I had some teaching still after, so I had a few. I wouldn't be like go from the defense to being unemployed the next day. And I think if you can organize it like that, it's nice to kind of give you a little bit of time afterwards, not to be completely stressed out. And so I had some teaching, and then we went to Trinidad.
To relax a bit.
Work 24 hours a day. And then the vacation week was even more exhausting because we didn't sleep at all, or maybe 5 minutes in the car. And then I applied for other jobs, like jobs like biology jobs, but not in science. And I got one of them. So it was like a governmental, I don't know how it works in other countries, but we have a lot of governmentally employed biologists that handle things related to nature reserves or like a forest, and I was working with nature reserve related questions. So I had for 9 months a job that I could have had after my master's, or like it didn't require a PhD. It was just a normal biologist job. But that was also, I mean, that also kind of, I think you don't have to stress out about absolutely continuing in academia just because you did a PhD, because there's a lot of other things to do, as you know.
Very often it's like the automatic path. Oh, now I should do a postdoc. And if you get the chance, then then why not? But there are many options, and more. I mean, it's the pyramid, no? Like there are many options to do a PhD, it seems, but then it narrows quite a lot to continue in academia, and postdocs are a bit harder to get, and less and less and less. So keeping an eye. I mean, I see that you didn't mind. You were trying everything and had several options, and then you kept on choosing the one that lure you the most or you might enjoy the most.
Mm.
That is always a good thing. I was remembering now that I drag my PhD using my unemployment money to finish, but then I moved to Uppsala, and then I started a postdoc before my defense. So it was also another option.
Just go straight to the postdoc. You don't need to do this.
No, I don't defend. Yeah, that was good. I would like to talk about.
Yeah, it's always good to. I think it's also good to just apply for stuff in general. If you see a postdoc or another job ad and you're a bit like, oh, I don't know, just apply for it. You might change your mind later, and if you are selected for an interview, that's also really good to practice. And so I think you shouldn't, when it comes to applying for jobs or funding, like don't think so much, just do it. And then if you are all of a sudden offered a position, then you can think.
Then is the moment to choose.
Yes.
It's perfect to have several options. So I'm a bit aware of the time. We are going over what I had planned for this first part.
I see this.
But what I wanted to say is to the people listening or watching, you can write questions for Josefin or me if you want in the chat in YouTube, and then we will try to get them from there. And also, some people might get into the Zoom call that got the link, but just it will be a few minutes, and then we invite the people that want to come in. But just before that, I would like to talk about the postdoc stage and what you are doing right now.
Mhm.
And particularly, I think we should talk about your first clash with ethics in research, and how was that experience, and how it happened, and how you ended doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so that was part of my postdoc. I mean, not planned. Part of my postdoc. No, I did manage to land that grant that I had applied for. So after doing this other biology job for like in 9 months or so, I started working off my grant, and did so for like a couple of years. And then one of the when I was in the field working collecting data, another person working in the field, we randomly ended up working at the same field station. We was on Gotland, this island again. So the field station is small. It's smaller than many other field stations, and we were a few people there, and we were helping each other. So that means you are aware of what the other people are doing. We were also sharing one of the lab rooms. So I had more insight into this person's experiment that I would normally have at a lab station. I usually I wouldn't know what the other researchers are doing because they are in their room doing their stuff. But here we were kind of, us that were there were kind of collaborating. And a year after the paper for this experiment came out in Science, and it was a study on perch, larvae, and microplastics, and how the fish were negatively affected by the plastic particles, behaviorally and physiologically, and that they were also consumed to a larger extent by the predators and so on. And I read this paper because it's related to what I work with. I don't work with microplastics, but I work with fish and environmental impacts. But I also read it, of course, because there were colleagues and friends of mine publishing it, and it's always fun to read what your friends and colleagues are publishing. And also it ended up in Science. I mean, that's a big thing. And when I pardon?
It's a big one, yes.
Yeah.
You want to read it.
And but when I read it, it was I don't know, it was a extremely weird experience, because I mean, you read the method description was just describing something that hadn't taken place. It was just science fictions. I mean, it was made up, and I knew while reading it that this is not the way it happened, because I had been there. And one of the reasons that I immediately knew that it wasn't correct and true was this predator experiment part, because I was also going to work with that predator species. So we used it was a European pike, or northern pike, and we had so many issues collecting them. Like usually you can collect thousands of them, but that year we collected like a handful. And so that was a big thing. I had to completely change my experimental setup, because I couldn't work on that species anymore. And like it was something that we discussed, all of us at the station, because more people were going to work with this species and we didn't get any. And you know, just in general, when you have a plan and it doesn't work and you have to completely replan. And so even so, in this paper there was a description of an experiment where they had used those pike as predators and doing whatnot, and I knew, like, that experiment never took place. We didn't have any. That was the main issue with the entire field.
And you saw that in the paper there were numbers that didn't exist at the time, and
and even like details also, like it was big things and small things. It was kind of everything, because the experiment, how it was set up was that the fish eggs and larvae were kind of put in a glass beaker, so like a container, like my mug, and with some plastics, and they were placed on a bench in the lab where I was also working. And there was like one air stone just at the surface. And when I read the method description for the exposure, it said that there was like these 1 liter tanks, and there were 4 air stones in each corner at the bottom to make sure, you know, that the plastics would. And I'm like, why did you even follow the truth regarding that? Like, why did you say it's a 1 liter tank when it was a cup? I don't know. It's so. There were also so many. Like, why? What does that have to do with anything?
And then you took the step of, I mean, deciding to do something about this must have been difficult.
Yeah, it was, but it's also, I mean, I talked to some colleagues. One of my colleagues, Fredrik Utfeldt, who had also been at the station, I asked him to carefully read it, and he did. And he was also shocked. And then we talked to some other colleagues, and I think I felt that we need to do something. Like, how, or what's the option? The option is doing nothing. Yeah. And just allowing this fabricated data to be part of the scientific literature. And even so, it's like, or it's like, you could have talked to the authors. It's like, what am I going to talk to them about? Am I going to ask them why they fabricated their data? That's not going to lead anywhere. And it was like, well, you could have asked them, you know, if there was a misunderstanding, but there wasn't a misunderstanding. Like,
it's so clear.
Yeah, I wasn't wondering whether anything was wrong. I knew that nothing was right, and that's the main kind of, that's very important here. And we didn't know, I didn't get any training in research ethics, or I barely knew that scientific misconduct existed. So I guess we kind of Googled scientific misconduct, or
What are the next steps?
what do you do if you have observed?
How would you Google that? What a mess. And that led to a what 14 months or 2 years of
It was 1.5
lot of
years of investigations and not being able to think about anything else than this case for day and night, and everything else was just put on hold. And I should say the poor masters and PhD students in the group that I was part of at that time. I mean, we couldn't talk about anything else than this case, and they were running experiments, and they were like, "Hello, can we can we
what a
talk
mess.
about our work now?" And we were just going on and on about this case.
Spectacular. And then it happened again after that.
It's like a never-ending story. If you start digging, I guess sadly it's common that there's more where it came from, in a way, which seems to be the case in this sad story also.
More and more pressure to publish and more incentives to cheat. Well, I think this deserves a whole podcast or another event to talk about it and dig deeper.
I'm also checking the time. I'm like, oh.
yeah, it's getting a bit later, and we have people waiting. So maybe we can open now for people that want to come in the conversation, and then another day I will convince you to come and talk about that deeper and how it has affected you and how you think what the future looks like in this respect. It's a bit scary. So I'm gonna let in some people. Let's see. And if anyone in the chat want to ask some questions, we can incorporate to the chat to the conversation. Where are you now, Josefin?
I'm in Stockholm in my apartment, in my living room.
And we have here Mariana.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hola, Mariana. Where are you calling from? Like in the radio?
I'm calling from Edinburgh, Scotland.
Thank you for being brave and joining the conversation.
Yeah, it's a bit daunting when it's a live conversation. Like you need to get it right.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't need to. Just look at me. But now this is just the three of us now, so we can just chat and see.
Nice.
Yeah. So you are. I know, Mariana, that you are doing your PhD now.
Yes.
What is it about?
I'm looking at the ecology of plants in the Arctic. So I know, Josefin, you said you didn't really like plants. Sorry, this is the other side of the spectrum.
I have an anecdote related to that, because I had a really good teacher actually in like botanics or whatever, plant stuff, and this poor teacher, he realized immediately that we only cared about animals. And when we were out looking at plants, I was doing the rock lifting that me and Fernando do. You lift rocks to look for animals underneath the rocks. It's a very adult thing to do.
Absolutely.
And I was lifting rocks, and he kind of, to himself, kind of like, nothing is growing under there.
That's not the place to look for plants. Yeah, but it's a lie, Mariana. Josefin really likes plants, and she was showing me around her apartment before the call, and she has so many plants.
Nice.
So don't you worry. It grows on us.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Pun intended. So did you have the chance to hear what we were talking about?
Yes,
And
yes, I listened to the whole thing. It's quite relevant to the stage I'm at because I am just at the end of my PhD, so I have maybe like 6 more months left or so. So
Whoa.
everything you were saying, Josephine, was hitting close to home, basically.
How is it? What are you facing there in Edinburgh? What will it be like?
What will it be
Your
like? Sorry?
defense or
Oh,
Mm.
it's quite different to what you guys were saying before. So it's a closed process. So you have an external examiner and an internal examiner, and then you sit in a room, or at least pre-COVID, you sat in a room with two of them, and then they ask you questions for like 3 hours basically, and then they make you get out of the room for like 5 minutes while they decide whether you passed or not. You are super nervous, and then they call you back, and then they tell you if you need to do corrections or you pass with the corrections. So it's very different. On the one hand, it's a bit sad that you don't get to do a public defense, because then, it would be nice for your family and your friends to be there for support. On the other hand, I guess it's a bit less nerve-wracking because it's just two more people. You don't need to present for a whole auditorium. So I think I kind of prefer it that way.
Pros and cons.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna let in Jaime.
But is it really just them kind of asking, or do you have more like a discussion around the questions, or?
Yeah, I think it's intended to be a discussion. So it really depends on which examiners you have. So I've heard some people saying they had like more old school examiners in a way, and they saw it more as a question answer, question answer. But all the good vivas I've heard about, they were like a discussion of your work, and many people have really seemed to enjoy it. So I hope mine is that way. It's a bit scary at this point, but yeah.
Do you know the people that are gonna?
Yes.
Okay.
You have some say on choosing them. Yeah.
Mm. And do you also go for drinks the night before, like Josefin did with her opponent?
Not before, I don't think. Maybe after.
Weird, actually, that we take the opponent for like a nice dinner with wine and stuff before the defense.
So they are too tired and hungover for the next day.
Yeah, I think it improves the conversation later. Hi, Jaime. Welcome.
Hey.
Hey. Nice picture you have behind.
Yeah.
Oh, it's similar to, I also have one of those old like school.
Actually, it's from Sweden. I'm here in Sweden.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Same author, maybe.
Yeah, and if it's possible, if Mariana has finished, I want to ask something to Josefin. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So yeah, I'm also from Spain, and I'm taking my master's here in at SLU in Umeå, and I'm taking the program. It's called Management of Fish and Wildlife Populations, I think. Yeah, and I'm almost done with my master thesis right now. So maybe I don't know if it's next week or in 2 weeks I will defend my thesis. So yeah, I'm also thinking, okay, what should I do right now? Should I take a PhD or maybe try to learn more Swedish and then try to go to these governmental jobs? So I don't know. I'm still doubting about what to do later. So I want to ask you, because if I understood correctly, you said that you got a job after your PhD in this governmental institution. It was in Länsstyrelsen or Naturvårdsverket or?
It was at Länsstyrelsen, yeah, the county one of the county administrative boards.
Okay, but then you decided to come back to the academia. Why? I want to.
Good question, Jaime.
Because I don't know. I feel like.
Why on earth?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess because I mean the application, the grant application, I had already written half a year earlier, or there's always a very long delay before, like from submitting your grant application until you get the result. In most countries, I think it's the same. And but the job I had was it was kind of short time because someone was on paternal leave, and so that person was going to come back, and then I wouldn't have the position anymore. But they did. It's quite common that, I mean, once you're you have your foot in one of those governmental institutions, then it's quite easy. Well, if you're doing a good job, I guess it's easy to get another job, or they extend it. And I was also offered an extension. So when I had when my grant was granted, I had the option of either taking that or continuing. And it wasn't, I mean, I was thinking a bit about it because my grant would be 4 years of funding, but the position at the county administrative board would have they would have given me, I mean, it was quite likely that I would have been able to land a permanent job there, and landing a permanent position in academia is more difficult, I would say, definitely. But still, I don't know. I really like science, and I don't know. There's so much to explore, and I guess it's the freedom of doing what you want, which isn't entirely true because there's obligations that come with it. But for me, it wasn't such a difficult choice in the end because I really do like science, and I also think that it's easier to to go back, or if you want to go back to a governmental job, it's easier to do it from science than to work at a government for many years and then try to get back into science, unfortunately, because if you stay out of science for too many years, in a way, it's difficult to get back in. So if you're kind of a bit unsure, I would just stay in science as long as you think it's fun, and as long as it's still providing something for you, then yeah, I think it's worth staying.
I'm gonna think about it.
But there's also, if you want to do something for like a year or half a year or something, that's usually completely fine, and then you can get back. I mean, science is also very stressful, and we do have a very high, that shouldn't be, it should be acknowledged that there is kind of a high level of mental illness when it comes to science, and that's serious stuff that we should take seriously. You should really, I think if you feel unhappy in science, then don't stay.
I know. Yeah. I don't know. I will think about it. Yeah, because I'm now learning a bit of Swedish, and I have heard from some other people that they are being hired in Länsstyrelsen right now in several counties here in Sweden, and they are quite happy. They are telling me, yeah, okay, if you can speak Swedish fluently, I think you can get a job, not easily, but it's going to be better for you if you get a job in Länsstyrelsen or Naturvårdsverket than an academia job. But I don't know. I think, well, I would think about it.
You have some time still, no?
Yeah, I mean,
and I think in general, if you're in science, then wherever you are working, then English kind of is the working language. And I think that, but if you want to go into a governmental position, I also guess, regardless of country where you want to work, you probably do need to speak the native language then. Yeah, so that can be
tricky.
I was also thinking, you were saying you're finishing your master's, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't necessarily need to have like a linear progression after your master's. Like, I did my master's and then I went to work for 4 years and then I went back to academia. So that's not seeing, if you ever want to be doing a PhD or being in science, like, I don't think you need to go straight from your master's to a PhD. You can do other stuff, and that's actually seeing as a good experience before getting into a PhD. So I don't think it's, like Josephine was saying, if you go into a postdoc straight after the PhD, that needs to be a much more linear thing, because then you need to keep on publishing and so on. But from master's to PhD, I think take all the time you need. Basically, there's no rush.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Definitely. Yeah, the being out of science is kind of after your PhD, I guess, and thereafter. So yeah, you still have plenty of time to think about what you want to do.
Plenty of options. Optionality, a word that is on fashion now.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks for the answers and for the tips. Yeah, thanks.
Good luck.
So you are very close.
Oof, I'm almost there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And what do you like of science so far, Jaime? What attracts you from your side of?
Just said before, yeah, it's like of course if you have the money, you can try to make your own group. You can try to tailor your work. Like if I want to work with this topic, okay, if I have the money, if I have the funding, I can do it. Whereas if you are, for example, in this governmental institution, you have to do what they tell you to do. And also, I think that you can make a lot more like progress in academia than in a governmental institution, maybe. And I don't know, I consider myself a curious person, so I think, yeah, it could be really fun to go into academia. But yeah, of course, I know that, yeah, as Josefin said before, it's not an easy path.
Mm-hmm.
But
Fernando, you also have the experience of.
I think we have such a combination here right now, because I was just gonna ask Mariana, who first went out of academia, then in academia, and now what are you going to do, Mariana? What's your feeling right now, in or out?
That's my main
Preference.
question just now. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And I was interested when Josephine was saying how you kind of apply for everything after your PhD and kind of see what happens. So I think that's gonna be my strategy. I'm just gonna send things out there and see what comes back. But it's a really difficult decision to make, because, like Josephine was saying, if you leave academia now, it's gonna be so hard to come back. So it feels like a proper crossroads. I don't think I felt this before. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer. Sorry.
Not yet. I can give. Sorry, no, you go ahead.
There is a specific grant. I don't know if it's part of the. I think it's one of the EU programs that have a specific grant if you have been away from academia for a while. So if you finish your PhD and then you do something else, and then because it's so hard to get back, they acknowledge this fact and they have a specific grant to help you get back. So then you get money for your own salary, I guess, and then to help you get back in. So there is, at least someone is acknowledging this and trying to do something about it.
That's great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Another option. Yeah, and I was just gonna say that I left academia after my last postdoc, and it's true that I came to a very close relative. So I'm still doing science here in the Czech Republic, and even though it's conservation and very specific and applied, I still write papers and do science. But then another option has appeared, and the last job I started in December last year is back in academia. So now I'm like what I joke very often in my Twitter or on Instagram, that I'm a mercenary scientist. Now I'm really a mercenary scientist because I'm helping people in academia to analyze data, and I'm writing papers also, and I'm going to a conference in November, and I'm back. I'm back. It's amazing. So it's another. I mean, it seems that it's increasingly hard, but there are options always to go in and out. And this career, this is what you said, Jaime. This is super fun. You can keep on exploring and being curious. And I think this is the most important trait if you want to do science, to be curious.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think? Should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Or do you have any more questions? We have been talking for long. So thank you very much, everybody here, particularly Josefin, for agreeing to this first grade. And I hope we can continue this conversation soon, because it will be interesting to continue this ethics part and going forward. But thank you, Mariana. Thank you, Jaime, for being brave and come and share your particular situation right now. And thank you, everybody in the chat and has been watching us. And for the future, if we will try and keep doing this kind of interviews and chats in El Bio Grupo, many in Spanish, but from time to time also some English-speaking ones. And I don't know, Jaime, my Swedish is still so, but maybe one day we can do one in Swedish.
Oh. I don't think so. Not yet. But maybe soon.
We want the updates. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.